Rolex's exclusivity is starting to wear thin. Here's why it's turning loyal customers away. For decades, Rolex has epitomized luxury, success, and craftsmanship. A Rolex on your wrist was more than just a timepiece. It was a statement, a symbol of having made it. But lately, something's changed. That once unquestionable allure of Rolex is being tested, and it's no longer the dream brand it once was for many. Why? Well, it's not about the watches themselves. They're still as sleek and impeccably crafted as ever. No, the real issue lies with the experience of actually getting one. That same exclusivity that once made owning a Rolex feel like an achievement is now starting to feel more like an obstacle. The waiting lists are longer, the price is higher, and the power struggles behind the scenes are leaving buyers feeling less like VIPs and more like outcasts. In this video, we'll dive deep into what's happening at the heart of Rolex's current crisis, why waiting lists are no longer a badge of honor, how price hikes and gray markets are turning buyers off, and why Rolex's tactics are pushing loyal enthusiasts to eye alternatives. And the biggest question of all, is Rolex at risk of losing its legendary status, or can they fix their strategy before it's too late? Let's get into it. Imagine this. You've scrimped, saved, and worked hard with your eye on a legendary Rolex. The excitement is real. You've pictured the moment you finally slip that iconic piece onto your wrist, an achievement years in the making. But then, reality hits. You walk into the store, ready to make the purchase, only to hear those dreaded words. You're on the wait list. At first, it seems manageable. A few months of waiting for the watch that'll set you apart? No problem. But then the months stretch into a year, or even two. What was once a thrilling anticipation slowly turns into a grueling endurance test. The excitement fades, replaced by frustration. The dream watch that once felt like a near guarantee is now slipping farther and farther out of reach. The emotional toll of these endless waits isn't something Rolex ever anticipated. What began as a mark of exclusivity is quickly becoming a point of contention for buyers. The patience they once had starts wearing thin. Instead of eagerly counting down the days until their new watch arrives, they begin counting the days of silence and uncertainty, wondering if the dream will ever come to life. For many, the wait isn't just annoying, it's a deal breaker. What should be a celebratory purchase has turned into an anxiety-ridden experience, where every update or lack thereof only fuels the frustration. A once loyal customer base is beginning to question if the reward is worth the wait. As time ticks by, those Rolex dreams start feeling more like an illusion. The emotional shift is noticeable. What was once an iconic piece to aspire to now feels like an elusive mirage. Enthusiasm begins to cool. The Rolex experience is morphing into something more akin to buyer's remorse before the purchase has even been made. And for some, the clock is ticking on their loyalty. Rolex has always prided itself on the exclusivity of its timepieces. A Rolex wasn't just a watch, it was a symbol of hard work, status, and rarity. But somewhere along the line, what was once a luxury brand's best-kept secret has turned into a strategy that feels more like a game of smoke and mirrors. Rolex has mastered the art of keeping supply tight. And in theory, this approach works. Fewer watches available means higher demand, creating an aura of exclusivity that makes owning a Rolex feel like an accomplishment. But here's the twist. What started as a symbol of prestige has now morphed into a frustration-filled scarcity game, and it's no longer playing out in the brand's favor. By deliberately limiting the number of watches available to the market, Rolex has shifted from being a luxury brand known for quality to one that is infamous for its scarcity. The strategy is no longer about offering the best watch, but rather about making the buyer earn it, through long waits, increased prices, and the constant uncertainty of whether they will ever get their hands on a Rolex at all. What was once seen as a prestigious sign of success now feels like a burden. Rolex has inadvertently turned its exclusivity into a test of patience and perseverance, pushing buyers to the brink of exhaustion. No one wants to be part of a luxury brand that teases them with the promise of a watch that might never arrive, or worse, might come with a price tag so inflated it no longer feels worth the effort. The strategy is alienating once loyal enthusiasts, and the cracks in the brand's carefully cultivated image are beginning to show. As waiting lists grow longer and frustrations mount, buyers who would once have proudly sported their Rolex are now turning to alternatives. Other luxury brands like Omega, Patek Philippe, and Audemars Piguet are stepping up their game, offering stunning craftsmanship, transparent pricing, and less agonizing weights. What was once a dream purchase is now beginning to feel like a luxury mirage, out of reach and increasingly difficult to justify. Rolex may have created a sense of exclusivity, but it's starting to feel less like a privilege and more like a trap. And as the competition takes notice, buyers are starting to ask, why put up with the scarcity scam when you can have an equally luxurious timepiece without the headache? When you step into a Rolex dealership, you're not just entering a store, you're entering a world where the rules of exclusivity don't just apply to the brand, but to the buyers as well. At the heart of this world lies an intricate power dynamic that's become as much a part of the Rolex experience as the watches themselves. This isn't just about the product, it's about the status of being chosen to own one. Rolex dealerships have created an unspoken hierarchy, one where high spenders are granted access to the VIP lane while the rest are left to languish on wait lists. To the casual observer, it might seem like a straightforward retail experience. Buy a watch, get a watch. But for those in the know, it's much more complex and far less fair. For the well-established collectors and wealthy patrons, buying a Rolex is less about the watch and more about maintaining their place in this social pecking order. High spenders are treated as royalty, bypassing the wait lists and receiving priority access to the most coveted models. The VIP treatment is often a reflection of how much you've spent in the past or how much you're willing to spend in the future, rather than any real connection to the quality or desirability of the watch itself. The result? A system that feels less like a fair marketplace and more like an exclusive club where only those with enough clout get in. And for the average customer, the experience is a frustrating one. What was supposed to be a celebratory purchase becomes a game of status, where favoritism reigns supreme. No matter how much you've saved, how badly you want that Rolex, or how long you've waited, if you're not in the dealer's inner circle, you might as well be invisible. This dealer power game not only creates a sense of unfairness, but also leaves potential customers feeling disappointed and disillusioned. The emotional investment they've poured into their desire for a Rolex often turns into resentment when they realize that access to the most sought-after timepieces isn't based on their love for the brand, but rather on their ability to play the game. What was supposed to be an aspiration, a symbol of success, ends up feeling like a transactional relationship where loyalty to the brand no longer matters. Instead, it's about who can spend the most and who's willing to wait the longest for a chance to join the club. For many, this reality isn't just frustrating, it's outright off-putting. As more and more people realize that getting their hands on a Rolex isn't about having the means to buy it, but rather about gaining access to an exclusive social circle, the allure of the brand starts to fade. The romance of Rolex is being replaced by the cynicism of a club that's more interested in who you know than who you are. And as the brand's most loyal enthusiasts begin to feel like second-class citizens, it's no wonder that many are starting to look elsewhere for their next luxury watch. The waitlist for a Rolex is no longer just an inconvenience. It's become an endurance sport. For many potential buyers, the process of waiting for their coveted timepiece feels like an endless marathon, where the finish line keeps moving further out of reach. And while the concept of waiting might seem mundane, the emotional impact of this drawn-out process is anything but. When you first put your name on a Rolex waitlist, there's a spark of excitement. You imagine the day when you'll finally walk into that dealership, collect your watch, and wear it with pride, knowing that you've earned the privilege of owning one of the most iconic luxury brands in the world. But that initial thrill soon fades as the days, weeks, and months slip by with no sign of progress. The longer the wait, the more it starts to feel like a test of patience, a trial that drags you through a slow and agonizing process, where each day feels like a tiny eternity. The excitement you once felt begins to wane, replaced by frustration, confusion, and, eventually, apathy. The dream of owning a Rolex, once a symbol of aspiration and accomplishment, slowly morphs into something less desirable. It becomes a chore, not a celebration. By the time the long-awaited call finally comes, it's not met with the joy you'd expect. Instead, there's a sense of indifference. The emotional connection to the watch, once so strong, has been diluted over time. What was supposed to be a life-changing moment now feels anticlimactic, as you realize the emotional investment you put into the wait didn't quite match the end result. In some cases, buyers even forget why they wanted the Rolex in the first place. The wait has been so long and mentally exhausting that they've moved on to other interests, other watches, or other luxury brands that don't require years of patience. What was once a dream now feels like a burden, and the excitement of getting that Rolex feels more like an obligation than a reward. It's an emotional roller coaster where the highs and lows don't just take a toll on the buyer's wallet, but also on their psyche. The anticipation turns to frustration, the thrill of the wait gives way to indifference, and the joy of ownership fades into a sense of relief that the waiting is finally over. Unfortunately, for Rolex, many buyers are realizing that they'd rather skip the drama entirely and seek out a brand that doesn't make luxury feel like a never-ending gauntlet. As if the endless waiting wasn't enough, Rolex has recently introduced significant price hikes that have further soured the experience for many buyers. Watches that were once considered relatively attainable for the luxury enthusiast are now pushing beyond their previously comfortable price points. Models that once hovered around $10,000 are now crossing the $15,000 threshold, and that's if you can even find them at retail. The price increases have led many Rolex enthusiasts to question whether the brand's once attainable luxury status has morphed into something entirely different. What was once a prized but accessible investment now feels out of reach for many would-be buyers. For those lucky enough to find a Rolex at retail, the feeling of winning a lottery ticket is quickly overshadowed by the realization that the brand is becoming increasingly out of touch with the desires of its customer base. But if you think paying a retail price means you've won the game, think again. The real chaos begins when you step into the gray market, where the prices for Rolex watches are skyrocketing even further. The secondary market has become a wild west of inflated prices, with watches regularly being sold for much more than their original retail value. A Rolex that cost $10,000 at retail could easily fetch $20,000 or more on the gray market. This makes buying a Rolex a high-stakes gamble, one that many buyers are increasingly unwilling to take. The gray market creates a dilemma for the Rolex buyer. On one hand, paying these inflated prices can feel like the only option if you're desperate for that coveted timepiece. On the other hand, the risks are high. Buying from the gray market means paying a premium for a watch with no official warranty or service backing. The lack of warranty coverage is a bitter pill for many buyers, as it undermines the trust and confidence that was once a cornerstone of the Rolex experience. Without the assurance that comes with buying from an authorized dealer, many potential buyers are left feeling uneasy. The lack of warranty not only makes the purchase feel like a financial gamble, but it also tarnishes the sense of security that comes with owning a Rolex. What should be a symbol of luxury and exclusivity now feels more like a risk. A watch that costs a fortune, but might not be worth the price once problems arise. The gray market chaos doesn't just create frustration for buyers, it also undermines the very essence of luxury. What was once a carefully curated, high-end experience is now a game of chance, with prices swinging wildly and buyers left to pick up the pieces. In a world where luxury is supposed to signify value and prestige, Rolex's current pricing strategy and gray market mayhem have turned what was once a symbol of reliability into a landscape filled with uncertainty. Rolex has long been synonymous with not just luxury, but a deeply emotional connection. For years, owning a Rolex wasn't just about the watch itself. It was about the pride, the sense of accomplishment, and the shared bond between generations of watch enthusiasts. It was a brand that evoked admiration and loyalty, one that spoke to the wearer's success and taste. But now, as the waitlist drags on and price hikes skyrocket, that emotional connection is starting to fray. The very essence of what made Rolex so special, the sense of exclusivity and prestige, has become a double-edged sword. While scarcity once fueled desire, it now feels like a test of endurance, alienating even the most devoted fans. The waiting list, which once seemed like an exclusive club to be proud of, now feels more like a punishment. And as the waiting stretches on for years, frustration builds up. For many, what started as eager anticipation is now turning into disillusionment. The excitement of buying a Rolex has turned into something that's more of a burden than a privilege. This prolonged wait isn't just testing patience, it's slowly eroding the brand's once strong relationship with its customers. Loyal Rolex buyers who have stood by the brand through thick and thin are beginning to feel disrespected. The watch they've dreamed of for years is no longer an attainable goal, but an elusive mirage. And as more and more buyers face the reality of never getting their hands on a Rolex, or having to pay exorbitant prices for one, they're beginning to question their loyalty. Enter the competition. Brands like Omega and Audemars Piguet are beginning to pick up the pieces where Rolex's once untouchable allure is faltering. These competitors are stepping up their game, offering stunning timepieces with less hassle and more respect for the customer's time. Omega, with its blend of craftsmanship and modern appeal, is attracting a younger crowd, while Audemars Piguet is offering a mix of exclusivity and accessibility that Rolex can no longer promise. As Rolex continues to lock its doors with high price tags and endless waiting, these brands are opening theirs, offering the same level of prestige with far fewer barriers to entry. The generational shift is becoming evident as younger buyers, raised in an era of instant gratification, look at Rolex's archaic model and find it deeply unappealing. They're not willing to wait years or pay exorbitant prices just for a name. Instead, they're gravitating toward brands that offer a more transparent and accessible approach to luxury. What once was a symbol of timelessness is now seen as a relic of a bygone era. And as this shift in loyalty continues, Rolex may find itself struggling to maintain its once imposing grip on the luxury watch market. The very loyalty that Rolex built its reputation on is now being tested in ways it hasn't been before. As buyers turn to competitors who respect their time and their investment, Rolex must reconsider its approach or risk losing a whole generation of customers who no longer believe in the brand's once glamorous narrative. The world of luxury watches is undergoing a profound transformation, and it's being driven by the younger generations. Millennials and Gen Z, these buyers, raised in a fast-paced, instant gratification culture, view luxury through a completely different lens than their predecessors. For them, the old-school allure of exclusivity, embodied by Rolex's notoriously long waiting lists, has lost its charm. In an age where everything is available at the click of a button, millennials and Gen Z are not willing to accept the delays and uncertainty that come with traditional luxury purchases. Their definition of luxury has shifted. It's no longer just about price tags and prestigious names, it's about convenience, accessibility, and transparency. These younger consumers are looking for a seamless buying experience, and they're willing to spend their money on brands that respect their time. Rolex, with its insistence on exclusivity and its emphasis on creating a sense of scarcity, is now at odds with this shift in values. The idea that luxury must be earned through waiting in line year after year seems outdated to these younger buyers. For them, the excitement of acquiring a Rolex isn't worth the prolonged delay and the emotional toll of being kept in the dark about when, or if, they'll ever get their hands on one. Instead, brands like Omega, Audemars Piguet, and even newer, more accessible players in the luxury watch space are capitalizing on this demand for immediate gratification. These companies are offering impressive craftsmanship and innovative designs without making customers jump through hoops. With shorter wait times and more responsive customer service, these competitors are providing a luxury experience that feels fresh, modern, and in tune with the expectations of younger consumers. Rolex's current strategy of exclusivity and scarcity, once seen as a hallmark of prestige, is starting to alienate this demographic. The younger generation is looking for a brand that not only delivers top-tier products, but also understands their desire for transparency and ease of access. What was once considered the gold standard in luxury is now seen as a hurdle, turning off millennials and Gen Z in favor of brands that cater to their fast-paced, tech-savvy lifestyle. In a world where young buyers are more informed, connected, and empowered than ever before, Rolex's outdated tactics of keeping things exclusive and elusive are beginning to feel like a barrier rather than a badge of honor. As these younger consumers increasingly gravitate toward brands that offer immediate satisfaction and a more modern approach to luxury, Rolex risks losing its relevance in a market that's evolving faster than the tick of its watches. As Rolex's traditional model of exclusivity begins to alienate both longtime enthusiasts and the younger generation, the question becomes, can Rolex adapt? The brand's legendary status and its long history of craftsmanship are undeniable. But in the face of evolving consumer expectations, especially among younger buyers, Rolex finds itself at a crossroads. Can it strike a balance between its storied heritage and the demands of a modern, impatient customer base? One potential solution lies in balancing heritage with accessibility. Rolex has always thrived on its exclusivity, a hallmark of luxury that has worked well for decades. However, the shifting dynamics of luxury markets, particularly the rise of millennial and Gen Z buyers, call for a rethinking of how exclusivity is implemented. Rather than making exclusivity about scarcity and waiting lists, Rolex could embrace a more transparent and efficient approach to distribution, one that still respects the craftsmanship and quality the brand is known for, but without forcing customers to endure endless delays. One possibility is to shorten the infamous wait lists while ensuring that demand remains high. By ramping up production without sacrificing the precision and meticulous attention to detail that make Rolex watches so revered, the brand could open the doors to more customers without losing its air of exclusivity. With the right balance, Rolex could maintain its cachet while making its luxury more accessible, reducing the current emotional frustration felt by potential buyers. Moreover, Rolex must rethink how it defines luxury. Today's luxury consumer doesn't just want a watch, they want an experience. They want a brand that respects their time and their desires. While Rolex's rich history is important, the future of luxury lies in making customers feel not only valued, but welcome. This means offering a more customer-centric experience, where communication is transparent, timelines are realistic, and the purchasing process doesn't feel like a long-distance relationship. By doing so, Rolex could retain its position at the top of the watch world, drawing in new customers who feel as if they belong rather than making them feel like outsiders looking in. Another possible adjustment involves streamlining the distribution process. The current power dynamics at Rolex dealerships, where customers are at the mercy of high-spending VIPs, create an uninviting and frustrating experience for many potential buyers. Rolex could make its retail experience more inclusive by offering equal access to all customers, no matter their spending history. This would send a message that the brand values its entire customer base, not just the elite few. In essence, Rolex needs to adapt without losing the essence of what made it great. By shifting the focus from exclusive waiting lists and inaccessible pricing to customer accessibility and transparent luxury, Rolex could create a new kind of prestige, one that resonates with today's buyers without sacrificing the values that built its empire. If Rolex can evolve in this direction, it will not only remain relevant, but could also lead the way in redefining what luxury means in the modern era. The question remains, will Rolex act quickly enough? In a world that's shifting at lightning speed, the opportunity to adapt may be slipping away. If the brand continues to ignore the changing tides of consumer behavior, it risks losing its place at the top of the luxury watch world. But if Rolex takes a step toward embracing both tradition and accessibility, it could not only secure its future, but also redefine luxury for generations to come. The time to act is now, before the ticking clock ticks it out of relevance. As Rolex stands today, it faces a challenge like no other in its storied history. The brand, once synonymous with timeless luxury and craftsmanship, is now teetering between maintaining its iconic exclusivity and adapting to the demands of a changing marketplace. The question remains, will Rolex adapt or risk losing its place at the top of the luxury watch world? For decades, Rolex's scarcity model worked like a charm, creating an aura of exclusivity that made every piece a coveted treasure. However, in the age of instant gratification, where millennials and Gen Z demand transparency and accessibility, this approach is beginning to feel more like a burden than a privilege. The wait lists, price hikes, dealer power games, and emotional toll on customers are alienating potential buyers, especially younger ones who value not just luxury, but the experience and respect that comes with it. Rolex must decide whether it will continue down its current path or recalibrate its strategy to ensure it remains relevant. Can the brand evolve without sacrificing its identity? Can it balance the prestige that made it a legend with a more customer-friendly, transparent, and accessible approach? The stakes are high, Rolex risks losing a generation of watch enthusiasts to more agile, customer-centric competitors like Omega, Audemars Piguet, and others who offer luxury without the weight. In the end, Rolex's future is not just about watches, it's about relationships. The brand has long been about more than just a timepiece. It's been about being part of an exclusive club. But that club must evolve, and so too must the experience it offers its customers. If Rolex can find a way to marry its deep-rooted heritage with a modernized, more customer-centric approach, it will not only maintain its status as a luxury icon, but may very well redefine what luxury means for future generations. So the closing question is Rolex testing its customers' patience too much, or is there still hope for the brand? Time will tell if Rolex will listen to the whispers of discontent and change course. The clock is ticking, and for the first time in decades, it's not just about the watch. It's about whether Rolex can keep its place at the top of the luxury pyramid, or if it will fade into a legend of the past.